Welcome to the Pet Loss Journals podcast. I am your host Louise. This podcast is all about the reality and impact pet loss has on our lives, and I will be discussing my personal journey through pet loss. So if you are struggling on your own pet loss journey, then this is the podcast for you. Hi and welcome to episode 11. This week I will be sharing a journal entry from the 12th of April 2020. I'm going to jump straight in and share that journal entry now. I have been missing the dogs so much during this coronavirus lockdown. They have just said 3 more weeks of lockdown. The whole country has been shut down since the second week of March. It's difficult and lonely, but I need to stay strong because it won't be forever. The 2 robins were in the garden again, as they always are. Ozzy and Moose, I think. I'm sure of it. They are gone nearly 6 months. It feels like only 2. It hurts so much still. But I'm trying my best. Grief is so fucking shit. It's horrible. It's torture. I miss my friends and family. That is my journal entry from April 2020, in the midst of the lockdowns. And that is what I would like to highlight this week, is all about isolation while grieving. I mentioned at the very end that I miss my family and friends. I obviously hadn't seen my friends or family in several weeks, and I was living on my own, as you're aware from other episodes. So it was really, really difficult. Of course, I do mention that I had 2 robins in the garden that would visit me every day. They started to appear in my garden, I would say, the day after my dogs passed away. And seeing them in the garden, perched there together, it was emotional. And I did get a sense that it was the dogs. I always did. And even when I see robins now, I always do. And I smile, and I know that it's one of them if I see a robin. But there was 2 together that would come and visit my garden for a long time after they passed away. And you may notice that. You may notice birds, butterflies, feathers appearing out of nowhere, and you may still see them reoccurring over and over again. I like to feel and think like they are signs from the afterlife and from our beloved pets that have passed on, or even people that we have lost in our life, that they can show us signs that they're still with us and they're still in our heart and supporting us. And that although we do feel really, really alone, we're not alone. We aren't. So I hope that hearing about that little story of my 2 visitors in my garden will maybe arise some questions that you may have had if you have seen some signs recently or in the past of your own that could connect the dots to somebody or a pet that has passed on. I speak about the difficulty of how lonely it is in the middle of this intense grieving experience, and I just want to highlight that living on your own, it is extremely difficult, and it heightens that experience even more. When we live with our partners, or we live with friends or family, now not in all cases, but in some cases we can receive comfort and support from these people that we live with. But in some cases we can't, as we've discussed in earlier episodes, that for some people, the close people in their lives just don't quite understand and don't offer that support and care that they need. It's different for everybody, of course, and it depends on your own individual situation. But personally speaking, for myself, living on my own and losing essentially my two gorgeous best friends, essentially my kids, losing those from my life, and then being plummeted into lockdowns, less than 6 months later, it plays havoc on trying to heal from a major loss experience. It really does. I know that it's not even that long ago now since the lockdowns and countries shutting down to a standstill, and there is grief alone in that situation. That is a huge, huge change. A huge change to a familiar pattern of behaviour that we were used to. That in itself is a grief experience. Let alone losing a companion animal, either before that or during that time, is an added stress, an added anxiety. I try to put myself back in my shoes when I read these journal entries back to that time. And this may have happened to some of you listening. Maybe you lost a pet during that time, during a lockdown, during the virus. And that has happened to so many people that I've spoken to. And just navigating through that has been just extra difficult, extra just turmoil within themselves. And to say that the whole country has been shut down and they say that 3 more weeks of lockdown are ahead, knowing that I cannot go and physically, receive support or a hug or a chat from a friend, that was really, really hard for me to digest and to swallow as such. That was difficult. Obviously, it created connections online. I'm speaking to you online. There was Zoom, there was phone calls, there was voice notes. But for some people that are in the middle of grief, the human connection in person, physically, is something that really aids in healing and helps people to begin to process what's happened by talking out loud to a living human in front of them. And that's reality, and that's a fact, to be honest. But we have adapted and we have created a world where it has become more digital and more accepted to communicate over the internet, on video chat, which is amazing. And it was all quite new to me, and I started to do that. And I started to do some video calls, which I found actually quite comforting. When I eventually, let go and decided to try that out, what had I to lose, to be quite honest? I was living on my own. There was a part in this journal entry that I want to highlight, and I will read it out. So there was the section in it that I said, but I need to stay strong because it won't be forever. But I'm telling myself that I need to stay strong. And that is such a myth when it comes to grief. And I speak about this in the grief recovery method programs that I facilitate. And staying strong, in inverted commas, is a huge myth. And I literally wrote that down. And I was literally saying that to myself that day in April 2020, telling myself that it won't be forever. And I don't know, did I mean the grief won't be forever or the lockdowns won't be forever? I would say a mixture of both. But I just want to let you know, if you're telling yourself that, if you're saying that to yourself, you have that narrative and you have that within you that you have to stay strong, it's okay to not stay strong. It's okay to break down the walls. It's okay to cry uncontrollably. It's okay to absolutely wail and scream and, whatever you need to do. It's okay. It's okay not to stay strong. It's okay not to put on a front. If you're going through a really intense time at the minute, and if somebody said, just stay strong, you'll be fine, is that helpful? No. But yet you can see that I've told myself that, essentially. I was telling myself that. If I was told that by somebody, I wouldn't find it helpful. Nor should I have found that helpful, telling myself those kinds of things. It is okay not to stay strong. Because in vulnerability, there is strength, there is confidence. That's where the strength comes from. If we're talking about the word strong, the strength comes from being vulnerable. The strength comes from crying uncontrollably, screaming in emotional pain, not being able to get up, listening to your body, saying you want to just let this emotion out for the day. You don't want to leave the house, or you do want to leave the house. You want to go hiking, go up a mountain and cry and scream at the top. Whatever that is for you, whatever is true for you in your experience that you're going through, in your grief journey, what is true for you. So what I'm trying to get at is that within isolation, our intense feelings and experience of grief are heightened to an extraordinary level that are just completely out of normality that we're used to. Lockdowns aren't normal. Being told to stay in your house and lock yourself in there, and that there are, people checking the local area if you leave, and this kind of thing is just so unnatural. It's frightening, and it's a grief experience in itself. So if you were somebody that lost your beautiful companion animal during that time, I empathise with you. I have compassion for you. But also to highlight that whether that happened during a lockdown experience or whether that happened recently, we don't compare losses. One is not worse than the other. Both are experienced 100%. Both are extremely intense and individual and unique to each and every person that is going through it. Pet loss grief is horrendous. That is the reality. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this week's episode. Remember, your pet loss grief is real, and it is so valid. Please be gentle on yourself. Until next time, take care.